Voilà, bonsoir madame, bonsoir monsieur, bienvenue sur les antennes de Jacquesrogershow. Encore une fois, comme je vous l'ai dit un peu plus tôt, comme j'ai introduit, ce soir on va parler de l'immigration. Cela nous concerne tous, surtout nous les Africains qui vivent ici aux États-Unis. Alors comme vous le savez, la 10e conférence annuelle sur l'immigration s'est passée il y a 3 semaines cela à Washington DC. C'est organisé par une ONG qu'on appelle MPI, Migration Policy Institute, et bien sûr aussi c'est sponsorisé par une autre ONG qu'on appelle Catholique, c'est Legal Immigration Network Inc. Et notre invité ce soir, c'est Tatiana Delgado, c'est une spécialiste de l'immigration. Elle sera là pour nous parler, en tout cas, des programmes qui vont nous bénéficier, en tout cas, nous, les immigrants africains. Encore une fois, l'interview sera en anglais et plus tard, soit moi ou en tout cas, Monsieur Chérif, les panélistes, Monsieur Aïda, Jacques Roger, d'une façon générale, on va essayer de vous traduire, et, en tout cas, toute personne aussi qui voudrait poser des questions. Alors, je prie tout le monde de l'attention, de suivre avec beaucoup d'attention, beaucoup d'intérêt, car c'est très intéressant. Cela nous regarde tous et comme ça, vous aurez des questions pour Tatiana. So, again, Tatiana, once again, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Jacquesrogershow.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, quickly, again, I was just introducing in French. I'm sure you understood like most of the things that
I did understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, again, welcome to the Jacquesrogershow. Before we start, guys, I just want to introduce our guest today, Tatiana Delgado. Tatiana Delgado is a training and legal support attorney with the Catholic Legal Immigration Network or Clinic. She promotes the dignity and protect the rights of immigrants in partnership with a dedicated network of over 200 nonprofit legal services programs. So, Tatiana, once again, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, Tatiana, again, it was very nice meeting you at the 10th annual Immigration Law and Policy conference that was held October 31st in Washington D.C. Now, you specialize at one of the clinics. You guys are specialized at Daca. We talked about it. So now. The first question I'm going to ask you, what is deferred action for childhood arrival, or DACA? What is it?
So deferred action for childhood arrivals really stems from a memorandum that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary issued a little over a year ago. It was issued on June 15, 2012. And in this memo, basically what the DHS Secretary said was that they were going to defer removal against a certain group of people. And they laid out some general ideas about who they were interested in making sure that these people would receive this benefit. And out of this came the DACA program. And basically what deferred action means is that the government is telling somebody, look, we know that you're here undocumented. We know that you don't have papers, right? But we're not going to deport you. And if you are eligible, meaning that if you meet certain requirements, and I can talk about those in a little bit, but if you do meet those requirements, then we are going to promise that we will not move forward with trying to deport you from the country for 2 years is what they've offered, and it can be renewed.
Now, what are the benefits of the DACA?
So there are several benefits. This promise, right, from the government that they will not deport you for 2 years and then you can renew it. But beyond that, and I think what tends to be sort of the most attractive about this is a work permit. A work permit that is also valid for that 2-year period and can be renewed. And the person then becomes eligible for a Social Security number, and in most states, a driver's license. So this really does open a lot of doors for people out there that did not previously have a form of identification here in the United States, because it allows them to go ahead and get that Social Security number that valid work permit that they can use for any employer, and just make sure that they're able to move forward with their lives.
Sure.
The other benefit.
Well,
the other benefit also, which people kind of also tend to be very interested in, is the opportunity to travel abroad temporarily for certain reasons. So if you can show that you need to travel abroad for an educational reason, an employment reason, or even a humanitarian reason, that can be another way after you've been granted DACA that you can travel abroad. So let's say somebody's in college and they want to study abroad. Well, this gives them the opportunity to do that. Or if they maybe want to visit a sick relative in another country. In the past, they probably would not have been able to do that. But this allows them to request that permission to go abroad temporarily.
Now, Tatiana, who is eligible for DACA?
Well, the requirements involve a lot of dates. There's a lot of dates, and there's sort of an age range to apply as well. June 15, 2012 becomes very important in this context. And the reason for that is, as I said earlier, that was the date that it was announced. So on June 15, 2012, the person must have been under the age of 31. And generally speaking, people have to be at least 15 years old. There are certain exceptions to that, but generally we're looking at people between the ages of 15 and 30, well, as of June 15, 2012. However, if somebody, let's say, is currently 14 years old, and maybe they're turning 15 this year, they could also apply so long as they meet all the other guidelines. So there are people that are going to be aging into the program, meaning that they're going to be getting to be old enough to apply. So as time goes on, we're going to see more people eligible for the program. That's one of the requirements. Then there's this idea of residence. The government is very concerned about helping people who have been here for a while in this context, meaning people who have been here since at least June 15, 2007 until the present. So there's this idea that they're looking for people that have been around for a while and that came to the U.S. before they turned 16. That's why it's called childhood arrivals, right? So they're looking for people that came before turning 16 years old. There's also an idea that the person must have actually been here on the date that the program was announced, so physical presence is how we refer to that, and that they have been that they were undocumented on that date, on June 15, 2012. Now, there's also an educational aspect to this. They're looking for people who are either high school graduates or are working towards their GED. There can be also opportunities for people that maybe are taking English as a second language courses or vocational training programs. So it's not just school. It can be other types of programs that help somebody sort of advance their educational goals, advance their professional goals. So that's also another area where we really try to motivate people to, get into that GED course. Start thinking about taking that course so that you can be eligible to apply. So there are ways for people to become eligible in that sense. And finally, the person cannot have been convicted of certain types of crimes. And the government has given us an idea of what they're looking for, but the idea is that, they can't pose a threat to national security or public safety. And so that's when really screening becomes very important. People really need to get screened to make sure that they're eligible and, contact legal service providers or attorneys to try to help them get through this process.
Sure. Now, Tatiana, now that the DACA program has been around for over 1 year, what do we know about DACA, like the applicant pool? Any insight on DACA application from individuals from Africa?
Right. So now that it's been around for a little over a year, there's been some studies done, and the Center for American Progress came out with a really interesting report that you can find online about this program and who's been applying and what the numbers are looking like. And when they looked at the individuals from different countries in Africa, what they noticed is that 1% of the applicant pool is, from Africa, or at least, one country in Africa. And what they're seeing is that among those that are being denied, what they're seeing is that the African-born immigrants are the ones who are most likely to be denied. So generally speaking, if we're looking at
and why is that?
Yes. Yeah, so if we're looking at the whole applicant pool generally, there's been, by most standards, not too many denials. So we've seen the majority of people getting granted, okay? Now, the study itself does not give us any concrete conclusions on the reason for those denials, but there is some sense that part of this may involve the fact that for immigrants from places like Mexico and maybe even certain other places in Central America, there's just been more information and disseminated to people about this. There's just been more information out there about this particular program. And, DACA does involve quite a bit amount of work, and denials can be based on a number of different reasons. It could be that you just didn't provide enough evidence of your stay here in the United States, because a lot of this really does include providing a lot of evidence of these different guidelines, these eligibility requirements. So we can't say for sure why it is that we're seeing this number, but the report does give us some ideas, maybe some thoughts on the issue.
Sure. Now, why should people apply? I mean, some people have expressed fear, especially among the African. Do you think African immigrants are misrepresented, or there are not many information out there for Africans to know about programs like this?
Well, we definitely have heard this issue of fear, and it's a very reasonable one. And what we've been telling people is, hundreds of thousands of people have applied for this benefit at this point, and we've seen a lot of approvals. It's changing a lot of people's lives, and we know that there will be a renewal process. The renewal process is taking place, and it's getting developed pretty soon. So we know that there's more coming for people that are already enrolled in the program, and it's just a benefit that's available now. And so we've definitely been advocating that people do apply. It's something that, in the long run, if we see comprehensive immigration reform, or I guess I should say when we see comprehensive immigration reform, if we see a bill that's similar to the one that has already passed in the Senate, obviously it's not law yet because it's only passed in the Senate here in the United States, but if we do see a bill similar to that, people who have applied for this benefit for DACA and who have been granted DACA will have certain benefits. So if we're thinking about the long run, and if we sort of can imagine that there be a bill that is similar to what we're seeing coming out of the Senate, hopefully, advocates always, we're always hoping that that'll be the case, then this could really benefit a lot of these DACA recipients. But I mean, the fear I totally understand. But there have been a lot of people that have been approved. A lot of people have come forward. But again, that's why it becomes so important for somebody to get properly screened by an attorney, just to make sure that they're not taking unnecessary risk.
Sure. Thank you. Now, Tatiana, where can people find legal help, for instance?
Yeah, so again, I mean, I'm definitely advocating that people, if they're interested in learning more about this, that there's a couple of places that they can go. So they can visit our website, the Catholic Legal Immigration Network. We have a website where there's a whole map of legal service providers, and most of them are doing this work. So I'll refer you to www.cliniclegal.org, and that's CLINICLEGAL.org. So that's one place you can look. But we're also part of a larger campaign. It's called the Own the Dream campaign. And the Own the Dream campaign is a collaboration among a number of different national organizations. And we're all working to keep that message alive about this program and really promote it. And so that's another place where people can turn to for resources, for more information. And that website is www.weownthedream.org. So those are two places where people can go to try to find more legal help.
So, any phone number that the office or email that you could give to the listeners?
Yes, we also have a hotline, and this one is operated by the the NALEO. It's a national organization, and the hotline is 855-DREAM31. So that's another place that people can call for information, and there's actually telephone operators that are available to answer questions about this program.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. So once again, thank you. If you could, probably we could take 2 or 3 listeners. I'm sure they have a couple of questions. We could take questions from the listeners.
Great.
Sure. Jacques, encore une fois, merci d'avoir eu Tatiana sur l'antenne. Je ne sais pas si tu as une question pour Tatiana ou en tout cas si on peut ouvrir le débat à l'auditoire pour les questions. Jacques.
I do not have a question.
Monsieur Sherif Aïdala, est-ce que vous avez une question pour Tatiana?
Oui, allô?
Oui, monsieur Aïdala.
Non, je sais pas monsieur Aïdala, c'est Sidibé.
Ah oui, monsieur Sidibé. Yeah, go ahead. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Ms. Tatiana. Hi, Ms. Tatiana.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for answering our call. My concern about this process, Ms. Tatiana, is about if you apply this this application and it's just gonna be on working permit, or you're gonna get you on to green card?
That's an excellent question, and that's an excellent question. So what happens is this is really just a work permit. So there's no path to residency, right? There's no path to a green card. And what the federal bill, right, the reform bill that we have right now that just came out of the Senate is basically creating as a path to residency for individuals that fall into sort of what we consider the dreamers, right? So those kids, people that came to the U.S. as children, the requirements under that bill are a little bit different. They're not exactly the same as Daca. But right now, this program does not create a path to a green card. It's really only just a work permit and, access to the ability to get a driver's license in most places, a social security number. But right, that's an excellent question. It actually does not do that. So there's definitely much more work to be done.
It is. It's a really interesting question. Now, based on the question that Mr. Sidibe asked you, Tatiana, earlier on your presentation you were saying people could travel as well if they wanted to. So how does that? If you don't have a green card, so how does it work based on the program? DACA?
Right. Yeah. So basically you have to apply for DACA first, right? And there's a process there. You have to compile all your evidence and send that document into U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. After you get that application approved, then you can apply for something that's called advanced parole. And advanced parole is basically when somebody requests permission to re-enter the United States after a temporary stay abroad. So basically what you're telling the government is you're saying, okay, so I am now a DACA recipient, and I want to go to X country in wherever, and I want to go there because I have a sick relative, for example. So then you have to provide evidence to show that there's a sick relative in that country, that there's definitely a good reason for you to go. And then you receive a document that is basically allows you to, you'll basically leave, right? And then when you come back in, you can use that document. You can present it at Custom and Border Protection, right? And just in the normal course of events, you present that document. And there, basically what you're doing is you're seeking permission to come back into the United States formally. And advanced parole really is meant to be sort of advanced permission, but the government always tells us, look, okay, yes, it's true, it's advanced permission, but doesn't guarantee it. So that's something that they do set out. They say, okay, it doesn't guarantee it, but it is sort of like a provisional in the sense. It's kind of like you can go and we have this document that will allow you to come back. But they can always do an inspection at the border and, make a decision. And what we've been trying to do over the last few months, because this is such a new thing for DACA recipients, although it's not a new thing for other people. We have, this is a type of situation. Advanced parole has been around for a while, and it's been used by people who have, for example, a pending green card application when they're adjusting status, or people who have something called temporary protected status. So this idea of advanced parole is not completely new, but it is new for DACA recipients. So in that sense, it is new. So we've been trying to gather more information about what people's experiences have been on their way back in, but we have seen plenty of successes as far as people getting permission to come back in. But we're trying to sort of keep an eye out on how that's going and how that's unfolding, because it is sort of new for this population.
Sure. Thank you. Tatiana, I guess we're going to have to bring you back because there's so many information for another show. Mr. Sidibe, do you have another question before we take probably to your caller quickly?
Yes, I do have another question. Ms. Tatiana, in case some people apply this working authorization and they have it, and for some reason they trying to renew or they deny the renewable application, they gonna get the deport or they gonna stay in the country? Thank you very much.
That's another really good question.
Yeah, that's a great question too. Yeah, so right now I can tell you what's been happening with denials. Okay, so for people who have received denials, and the only reason that they received denial was, maybe they just didn't provide enough documents, or there was just something, about the way that they laid out their application that wasn't very clear, all these kinds of issues that have nothing to do with somebody being a risk to public safety or, a criminal, like a severe criminal, a serious criminal, then they've just been getting a letter, an end of story, and that's all there is to it. Okay? There's been nothing else done against people in this category. So that's what we've been seeing. So that's what I can tell you about what we've been seeing, is that they've just been getting a denial letter, end of story, nothing more happens. Now, renewal process, we really don't have that much information about the renewal process yet because it hasn't happened yet. So right now, we're hoping soon we'll get some more information about it, and then we'll be able to spread the word about the way that's going to work.
Sure. Mr. Sidibe, thanks. Tatiana,
thank you very much.
We have so many, I'm receiving so many text messages about, asking you questions. We even have listeners listening from France, from Paris, actually.
Wow.
He's actually one of the members of the panel. Jacques, received text messages. This text message says it's a listener from Philadelphia. Before we take to the next listener, he said for Tatiana, number one, do you need an I-94? Number two, can you apply without the help of an attorney? So those are the two questions.
Yeah. First question was the I-94. Okay, so for those on the call that are not familiar with that document, the I-94 is something that people usually receive when they come in with a tourist visa a lot of times, or basically it's for people that come in with permission. And usually that document then has their name on it. It's stamped with the date that the person came into the country, and it usually says how long they're allowed to stay. Okay, so that's generally more or less a general explanation of that document. So the answer to that question is no, you do not need to have an I-94 in order to apply. So it means that we're talking about people in several categories of situations. One situation is the person who came in with the tourist visa, for example, right? And then they overstayed, right? They stayed beyond the time that they were authorized to stay in the United States. But you can also have situations where the person came in without anything at all, right? They crossed the border and they didn't have any document, no I-94. So those are two different situations under which somebody can still be eligible, so long as they were undocumented, right? So they didn't have status on June 15, 2012. That's the date that becomes very important. Now, the second question has to do with whether somebody should apply without an attorney. Mm-hmm. I'm an attorney, and I really do recommend that people seek advice from an attorney to move forward with the process. And the reason for that is there are very concrete guidelines that the government has set out for this. So if I mentioned all these dates, and then I mentioned, a certain amount of time that you're supposed to be here, and evidence that you have to organize and put together. So my advice to people is that if they're interested in applying for this, that they go ahead and do seek advice from an attorney before doing so, because you just want to make sure that it's done right from the very beginning, so you can avoid issues down the line.
Sure, thank you. Jack, can we take Mr. Barry quickly for one question, and then take probably two more listeners? Mr. Barry, do you have a question?
Yeah, good evening. How are you doing, Tatiana?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
My question is not about Daca. It's about what you call when you do political asylum, they grant you removal holding. So how many years you were able to be on holding removal for you to apply for green card? Thank you.
Hi. Okay, so I really will not be able to answer that question for you on this particular setting, but I would recommend that if you are in the United States, that you go ahead and visit the cliniclegal.org for our affiliate map. It's basically a map that has the legal organizations that are available to folks all over the country. And I would definitely recommend that you call one of those organizations to see if you can get your individual situation assessed and looked at. Because I think it'd be unfair for me to answer that question for you like this.
Sure, definitely. Thank you. Jacques, can we take one more listener and then take Mr. Bayer from Paris?
Yeah, go ahead for Mr. Barry for Paris.
Hello.
Hey, Mr. Barry.
Yeah, you hear me or not?
Yeah, go ahead for your question.
Okay. My question is this, because I have listened very, very carefully. I don't know her name, but my question is that in Europe, the working permit and the green card, the stay permit is unique and one document. My problem is in the U.S. why the American policy about immigration don't want to take in consideration the mental situation of the immigrants, because the immigrant works in the U.S. and participates in the development of the United States. But if they can stay and work, but they can't go and see their family, why difference between Europe and the U.S.? Why the American American policy immigration can't take in consideration the situation of the immigrants? Why?
Well, it was a bit muffled, so I'm having a hard time understanding the question.
Yes.
Sorry.
I said that.
Monsieur Barry, je pense qu'elle est là pour un programme très spécial. C'est ce programme-là qu'on appelle Daca. Je ne pense pas si elle pourra répondre à la question que vous lui avez posée. Je pense que ça, c'est un autre débat. Je sais pas. On pourra amener d'autres personnes pour qu'on parle spécialement de ça. Mais là, elle est là pour un programme vraiment très spécial. C'est qu'elle vient de présenter, si vous comprenez. Voilà, merci de votre compréhension, Monsieur Barry. Restez là peut-être plus tard à la fin. On aura le temps de faire des commentaires. Alors, on va prendre Monsieur Diallo Bronx, from the Bronx, New York. Monsieur Diallo.
Hi. Thanks, Mr. Diallo, for having me. Thanks, Tatiana, for coming to the Jacquesrogershow. I'm going to go real quick. I would like to you to tell us, clearly in an English language, what's the difference between the deferred actions and being granted of asylum, because apparently this has been going on in New York City here. We're still like going back and forth. People are misinterpreting those two. Can you tell us that? Thanks for coming.
So the difference, just so I make sure I understand the difference between deferred action for childhood arrivals, Daca, and asylum, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, so DACA is really meant to be, a form of relief, just like asylum is. They're both forms of relief in a sense, right? It's an immigration benefit. But asylum has very different requirements. So asylum really has to do with a fear that you have of returning to your home country, and it has to be connected to 5 different protected grounds. And so we're talking about religion, nationality, political opinion, membership in a particular social group. These are all the types of situations that relate to a case for asylum. So, the sort of the typical situation we can think of is, let's say that somebody has been very politically active in their home country, and then they come to the United States and they're fleeing that situation because the government has tried to persecute them, or maybe has already persecuted them in the past. And so now they're here in the United States and they're seeking refuge, right? They're seeking protection from the U.S. government to avoid any other persecution in that home country. And so there's a number of other set of requirements for asylum, and so that's really meant to protect people that, ultimately we could have an individual who is eligible for both Daca and asylum. That's possible too. There could be people that could actually, have life experiences that would fit under both categories of relief, but they are very different.
Okay. Thanks, Tatiana. Again, thank you for coming on the Jacquesrogershow. I guess we will. I will contact you for an eventual show coming again, and then talk about DACA and other programs that African immigrants could benefit from. So now. The last question that I'm going to ask you, so what would you advise, for parents, African immigrants, parents, what should they do about the DACA program? And going back to the applications, what do they ask in order to be qualified, the applications? I mean, besides since you don't need the I-94, what are the requirements for the applications?
Yes, so as far as what parents can do, parents can help whoever's the applicant gather a lot of those documents that they're going to need, because that's going to be really on the applicant to try to get, for example, right, so you have to show that you have been here since June 15, 2007 until now, all right? And the way that that's done is you have to, come up with, for example, provide maybe bank transaction records if you've had a bank account, or school records if you've been in school. If you can show your school attendance records. Facebook statuses are also things that people can use. So these are all it involves a lot of work in sort of trying to piece all these things together and trying to compile all this information. So that's one way that I think the parents of applicants can help. But I also want to make sure people understand that somebody who can apply for this benefit, it could be that they're a parent themselves. Okay, so, because we're talking about people that were under the age of 31 as of June 15, 2012, right? So when we think about this program, sometimes I think people tend to think that it's really, it's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival, so they hear child and they think, oh, this is just for children. But this is also for people that are maybe in their, were in their late 20s and maybe already have children. And that's actually been helpful. For example, especially for women, it's easy. Let's say that you had a child in the United States, right? And so you've been here. That's one way to show, here I was in the United States, right, giving birth to this child. So those are all things that need to be sort of thought through for each individual person to figure out what has been their life experience and what it is that they can put together for the application. So that's definitely one way. And the other question you had about the application itself, there's a form that's available on the USCIS website, so it's www.uscis.gov, and it's the form I-821D, as in dog. And this form is the one that needs to be filled out along with another form, which is called the I-765, which is for the work permit application. And then there's a worksheet. There's a work permit worksheet that also needs to go along with it. And in this form, there's a number of questions about the person's, their date of birth, their country of nationality. They ask about the person's criminal history. And I also want to make sure it's clear. Just because somebody has, a criminal record doesn't mean that they're not necessarily going to be eligible. So that's why I always say consult with an attorney, because it might be that whatever criminal history that person had can be explained. It can, we can sort of work on it, and not all crimes are going to bar somebody from applying. So yeah, there's a number of questions about the person's criminal history. There's also about their previous addresses. They want to know if the person's been living here, so they ask those questions. So it's about, I think I want to say, 6 or 7 page document that the person needs to fill out, along with the application for the work permit and the worksheet.
Thank you, Tatiana. Mr. Delgado. Thank you very much. Again, the information, the website and phone number that people need to, in order if they want to contact the clinic.
Right. So there's the website, right? www.cliniclegal.org, CLINICLEGA.org. So that's our website. I definitely recommend that you visit that, and you can look for a legal service provider that's close to you. You can also visit the Own the Dream website, which has both nonprofit legal service providers and immigration attorneys listed. So you can look for other attorneys in different areas in the country, and that's www.weownthedream.org. And then there's the community hotline that we have available that's put out through an organization known as NALEO, and that's 855-DREAM31. And that one really is a very specific hotline dedicated only to answering questions about this program for folks out there that have questions.
Merci beaucoup, Tatiana Delgado. Je sais que tu parles un tout petit peu français. Oui. On va prendre une minute où on va parler français. Voilà, merci beaucoup en tout cas. Voilà, en tout cas, à l'intention de tous les auditeurs de Jacques-Roger, c'est notre spécialiste qui est venu pour nous parler en tout cas des programmes qui nous intéressent, nous les immigrants africains. Vous l'avez entendu, elle a fait son exposé en anglais. Voilà, Tatiana, encore une fois, merci d'être venue sur l'antenne.
Merci
beaucoup
à
d'Africains.
Merci à vous.
Voilà, il y a Monsieur Barry qui vous écoute à partir de la France, qui voulait poser une question. Alors, Monsieur Barry, rapidement, est-ce que vous voulez placer un petit mot à l'égard de notre invité? Rapidement, un petit mot.
Oui, mon mot, c'était la même question, mais bon, vous avez dit que ce n'est pas dans le débat, parce qu'en Europe, le permis de séjour et le permis de travail, c'est le même document. C'est le même document. Il n'y a pas de différence entre, comme elle a dit, working permit et le green card. En Europe, c'est le même document, parce qu'ici, on tient compte de l'immigrant, parce qu'il faut que l'immigrant qui travaille en France, qu'il puisse rentrer de temps en temps, ou en Europe, qu'il puisse rentrer de temps en temps voir sa famille. Mais en Europe, là, je vois que vous pouvez avoir une carte, pouvoir travailler, mais vous ne pouvez pas sortir parce qu'il faut encore faire une autre demande. Je trouve ça qu'on ne tient pas compte. C'est pour cela que je voulais savoir pourquoi cette différence entre les États-Unis et l'Europe. Bon, mais vous dites que c'est...
D'accord, il n'y a pas de problème. On va faire ça en autre débat. En tout cas, merci beaucoup, Monsieur Barry. Tatiana, encore une fois, merci d'être venu sur l'antenne de Jacquesrogershow pour nous parler de Daca. Et je pense qu'on va vous contacter pour d'autres éventuelles émissions, pourquoi pas dans d'autres antennes aussi, dans mes émissions, en tout cas dans d'autres radios où vous pourrez venir aussi parler de ce programme. Tatiana,
merci beaucoup pour l'opportunité.
Je vous en prie. Merci et à très bientôt. Au revoir.
Salut.
Bye. Voilà, encore une fois, ceux qui viennent juste d'écouter, c'est Tatiana Delgado. On va faire peut-être les commentaires en français pour ceux qui veulent. Il y a des parties qui n'ont pas compris dans l'exposé de Miss Tatiana. Elle a donné des informations. Vous pouvez aller sur le site, sur le website, où vous pouvez poser des questions. Et ce qui est intéressant, d'après ce qu'elle a dit, surtout nous les immigrants africains, beaucoup d'immigrants ont peur. Ils ont peur d'aller d'appliquer pour ce programme. Et il a dit que c'est juste 1%. Alors vous imaginez, juste 1%. Et je l'ai toujours dit, par exemple, dans la conférence, moi la question que j'avais posée, c'est pourquoi les immigrants africains ne sont pas assez représentés. Alors, les immigrants africains ne sont pas assez représentés. On ne parle pas d'eux. Et par exemple, qu'est-ce qu'on m'a dit, par exemple? On m'a dit que les immigrants africains ont été victimes de racisme, c'est-à-dire les victimes de racisme, ceux qui sont bien sûr ceux dont on devait déporter. Voilà, ces immigrants africains qu'on devait déporter. Je m'excuse. Alors, vous comprenez un tout petit peu. Et c'est pourquoi, lorsque j'ai posé la question, toutes ces personnes sont venues envers moi, ils m'ont demandé qu'ils veulent travailler avec la communauté africaine parce qu'il n'y a pas une bonne représentation des Africains sur les questions d'immigration. Je pense que tous ensemble, il faut qu'on utilise des plateformes comme ça, plateformes de Jacquesrogershow, Guinée-View, Médias d'Afrique, en tout cas, toutes les radios que vous connaissez, essayez de les sensibiliser pour qu'ensemble, qu'on sensibilise tout le monde pour que vous sachiez réellement qu'est-ce qu'il en est qu'est-ce qu'il en est sur les questions d'immigration. Et vous avez vu, elle a mentionné aussi l'apport que certains immigrants ont pour ces applications. Et je pense que M. Célibé aussi a posé de très bonnes questions. Je ne sais pas si d'autres ont des commentaires. Voilà. Jacques, merci aussi pour cette interview. Allô? Ben, d'accord. Alors en attendant que Jacquesrogershow ne revienne, je pense que Monsieur Barry, vous avez fait des commentaires quand même très intéressants, mais enfin, ce qu'il faut comprendre, l'immigration européenne, elle est complètement différente de l'immigration africaine. Il y a ça aussi, je pense que vous avez mentionné. Par exemple, ce programme dont elle a expliqué, c'est-à-dire c'est pour le programme, c'est le privilège, en fait, c'est pour ceux qui sont arrivés ici à l'âge de moins de 16 ans et qui ont moins de 31 ans et qui étaient physiquement présents aux États-Unis avant je pense que la date, c'est, si je ne me trompe, c'est le 15 juin 2012. Voilà, c'est la date. Et tu peux avoir un permis de travail et bien sûr aussi, après avoir appliqué ce programme qu'on appelle Daca, une fois que vous avez ce programme qui vous permet de travailler, si vous avez en tout cas des raisons suffisantes, si vous, par exemple, vous êtes un étudiant que vous pouvez aussi appliquer, là, on peut vous permettre d'aller hors du pays et aussi de revenir. Voilà. Ou en tout cas,
Allô?
Oui, monsieur Barry.
Je sais pas pour te couper. Tu sais, moi, je trouve que ce qui me gêne un peu, c'est qu'on puisse travailler, c'est-à-dire on peut mettre quelqu'un dans ces conditions-là pendant de longues années, parce que vous savez, l'immigrant aussi, quand il rentre au pays, aller voir sa famille, c'est quelque chose qui est très difficile. Psychologiquement, c'est très difficile. C'est pour cela ici, c'est toute l'Europe, vous allez voir. En Europe, la carte de séjour, elle est liée à la carte de travail. Dès qu'on vous accorde la carte de travail, si elle est d'une année, la carte de séjour est d'une année. Tous les deux sont liés ensemble. C'est pour vous permettre de faire en sorte que vous puissiez rentrer, aller souffler et revenir reprendre des forces, parce que l'immigration, s'il est maintenu dans cette situation-là, je pense que c'est une situation qui est assez difficile à vivre psychologiquement. C'est pour cela que je ne comprends pas un peu cette politique américaine de dissocier la carte de travail et la carte qui permettent à l'étranger de pouvoir se déplacer. Bon, je respecte, mais il faut tenir compte de l'immigrant aussi, à mon avis.
Bon, enfin, M. Barret, les questions d'immigration, il faut reconnaître que les deux sont complètement différentes. L'immigration européenne et américaine, complètement différentes. Je comprends ce que vous dites, absolument. Et je pense que c'est la même, c'est la question en fait qu'a posée M. Sidibé. Et ce programme, en fait, il y a beaucoup de confusion à savoir, est-ce que une fois que vous aurez, par exemple, le privilège d'avoir ce programme qu'on appelle Daca, est-ce que vous pouvez voyager? Ou en tout cas, est-ce que vous avez la carte verte? En fait, ce programme vous permet d'être ici légalement, avoir tous les statuts légaux en tant qu'immigrant, et que si, par exemple, pratiquement, si vous voulez, en tout cas, c'est un programme, c'est pour les jeunes, en fait. C'est un programme pour les jeunes qui sont là, soit qui sont au lycée ou au collège et qui veulent aller à l'école ou en tout cas continuer leurs études ou en tout cas encourager ces jeunes qui sont là. Et tenez-vous bien, hein, par exemple, l'ONG qui a fait cette conférence sur l'immigration, Monsieur Barry, ils ont constaté que les enfants immigrants africains, ils étaient très intelligents et que ces mêmes enfants immigrants africains ne pouvaient pas aller à l'école. Pourquoi? Pour une question de finance, pour une question de financement. Et pourtant, en fait, ici, on fait un peu d'amalgame parce que quand on parle d'immigrants, on parle souvent des immigrants hispaniques, qui sont les Espagnols, ou on parle des immigrants asiatiques. On ne parle pratiquement pas des immigrants africains. Et pourtant, ces immigrants bénéficient des mêmes privilèges. Et pourquoi on parle de tout ça? Elle a même donné l'exemple, c'est ceux qui traversent la frontière. Et nous, les immigrants africains, pratiquement tous les immigrants africains sont venus ici légalement. Et c'est pas le cas. Quand on parle de ces 11 millions d'immigrants, c'est pas le cas. Mais ce qui est aussi intéressant, hein, dans la conférence, peut-être que j'en ai pas parlé, c'est-à-dire ces immigrants qui restent ici une fois qu'ils perdent leur statut. Et ça aussi, il y a d'autres programmes qui sont là. Ces immigrants aussi peuvent bénéficier de ces statuts. Voilà un peu. Bon, enfin, c'est vrai qu'il y a beaucoup de questions. Hein. Elle est spécialisée seulement sur un programme. On va envoyer d'autres personnes aussi. J'ai eu beaucoup de contacts qui pourront venir ici expliquer d'autres programmes qui sont disponibles pour les immigrants.
Allô?
Oui, monsieur Barry, oui. Oui.
Pas pour te couper. Pour la scolarité, par exemple, en France, vous n'avez pas besoin d'avoir des papiers ou que vos parents aient des papiers pour aller à l'école. L'obligation scolaire s'applique à tout enfant. Que ses parents aient des papiers, que ses parents n'aient pas de papiers, à partir du moment où vous rentrez dans l'âge de l'obligation scolaire, vous devez aller à l'école. C'est systématique.
Allô?
Même si, oui.
Allô, vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Alors, monsieur...
Oui, on vous entend. Oui, monsieur Barry, oui, Jacques, on vous entend.
Ah oui, j'avais tenté de prendre la parole un peu plus tôt, mais je crois que c'est un peu... Alors, je pense que monsieur Barry cherche à faire une comparaison entre le système américain et puis le système français, j'ai l'impression. Hein?
Voilà, c'est ça, c'est cela, je crois que c'est cela.
Et le pays en général, hein, parce que c'est pratiquement pareil. Moi, vous savez, je comprends, mais ici, ce qu'on fait, je comprends la situation, on peut pas, chaque pays a sa culture, sa façon de faire les choses. Mais ici, quand on parle de l'obligation scolaire de l'enfant, et quand vous rentrez en Europe, vous rentrez en tant que mineur, à partir du moment où vous rentrez avec moins de 18 ans, à votre majorité, vous êtes pratiquement, si vous n'avez pas de problème judiciaire, vous êtes pratiquement éligible d'avoir une carte d'enfant. Si vous allez à l'école, si vous êtes scolarisé, ce qui signifie qu'ici, c'est toute l'Europe qui est comme ça. Quand vous êtes un enfant, vos parents n'ont pas de papier et ils peuvent se cacher. C'est vrai, peut-être si on vous prend, on peut tous vous faire partir ensemble. Mais l'enfant a le droit d'aller à l'école. Il a le droit d'aller à l'école au même titre que tout enfant dont les parents sont immigrants ou un enfant français ou un enfant européen. C'est ce que je dis, bon, je comprends la situation. C'est vrai que si les services publics sont beaucoup plus développés peut-être par rapport là-bas où c'est très libéral, et puis bon, voilà, je comprends la situation, mais c'est très stressant, je pense, pour les immigrants tout petit peu.
D'accord. Alors,